Today, we're diving into an absolute beast of a storm that tore through Illinois over the weekend of August 16th and 17th, 2025. I was one of the first to track this system as it unfolded, and let me tell you, it was a wild ride. This wasn't your average thunderstorm, it was a marathon of destruction that lasted nearly 17 hours, leaving a trail of chaos across northern Illinois. From toppled trees to flooded highways, this storm had it all. So, grab a snack, settle in, and let's break down what happened, why it was so intense, and what it means for the folks picking up the pieces. If you find this kind of deep dive weather content helpful, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. On Saturday, August 16, 2025, Illinois was slammed by a relentless storm system that didn't let up until the early hours of Sunday. Picture this. Wave after wave of thunderstorms, packing winds up to 70 miles per hour and dumping rain so heavy it turned streets into rivers. We're talking about a storm that knocked out power for over 200,000 people, brought down trees like they were matchsticks, and left entire neighborhoods underwater. This wasn't a quick hit-and-run event, it was a prolonged assault that tested the resilience of communities across the state. To give you a sense of the scale, let's walk through the timeline of this monster storm and explore the hardest-hit areas. The chaos kicked off late Saturday afternoon when the first storms fired up in northern Illinois. The atmosphere was primed for trouble, hot, humid air with heat index values soaring past 100 degrees. It was like the weather gods were cooking up a recipe for disaster. That steamy, unstable air was the perfect fuel for thunderstorms to explode into something much more dangerous. By late afternoon, places like Belvedere were in the crosshairs. Emergency crews there were overwhelmed, fielding over 50 calls as fierce winds snapped utility poles and uprooted trees. Cars were crushed under falling limbs, homes took a beating, and roads were blocked by debris. Local fire officials later confirmed this was no ordinary storm, it was a microburst, a sudden, intense downdraft that can produce winds as strong as a tornado but without the telltale rotation. Imagine a wall of wind slamming down from the sky, flattening everything in its path. That's what Belvedere dealt with. Now, let's talk about what makes a microburst so wild. Unlike a tornado, which spins and carves a narrow path, a microburst is like a giant fist punching straight down, spreading damage in all directions. It's fast, it's brutal, and it doesn't give you much warning. For the folks in Belvedere, it must have felt like the storm came out of nowhere. 1 minute, you're enjoying a warm Saturday afternoon, the next, your neighborhood looks like a war zone. I've seen some of the local reports on X, and people were sharing photos of mangled fences, shattered windows, and cars pinned under massive tree branches. It's the kind of thing that makes you realize how powerful nature can be. As the storm system pushed eastward, it didn't let up. Mount Prospect, a suburb northwest of Chicago, got hit hard by another microburst. This time, the winds targeted an apartment complex near Huntington Commons Road. The gusts were so intense they ripped off a chunk of the roof, leaving it dangling like a torn piece of paper. Water started pouring into the building as pipes burst, flooding hallways and soaking apartments. Debris from the roof crashed into the parking lot, damaging cars and making a mess of the area. Dozens of residents were forced to evacuate, and the building was declared uninhabitable. Can you imagine getting that call in the middle of a storm? Grab what you can and get out. It's heartbreaking to think about families displaced, especially with no warning. I was scrolling through X posts from Mount Prospect, and the reactions were raw. People were sharing videos of water gushing through their ceilings, cars half buried in debris, and emergency crews working through the night. One user posted, "I've never seen anything like this. The wind sounded like a freight train." That's the kind of vivid description that sticks with you. For a long video like this, I want to make sure we're not just throwing facts at you, we're painting a picture of what it was like to live through this storm. If you're watching from Illinois, drop a comment below and let us know how you weathered this one. Your stories help bring these events to life. As Saturday night rolled into Sunday morning, the storm system leveled up. A massive complex of thunderstorms, what meteorologists call a mesoscale convective system, formed and swept through northeastern Illinois. Between 2 and 3:30 a.m., a wide swath of damaging wind stretched from Algonquin, Illinois, all the way southeast to St. John, Indiana. Personal weather stations clocked gusts up to 67 miles per hour, and storm spotters reported trees and power lines down across multiple counties: McHenry, Kane, DuPage, and Will. In Algonquin, a massive tree crushed 3 cars in a single blow. In nearby Cary and Palatine, fallen limbs blocked roads and damaged homes. This all happened in the dead of night, when most people were asleep, which makes it even scarier. Imagine waking up to the sound of howling winds and crashing trees. While the winds were wreaking havoc, flooding became the real headline in Chicago. As the storms slowed down and regenerated, they unleashed torrential rain. Some areas saw 2 to 4 inches per hour. A weather station near Oswego recorded over 6 inches of rain in less than 12 hours, with most of it falling between 3 and 7 a.m. That's an insane amount of water in such a short time. On Chicago's southwest side, neighborhoods like Archer Heights and Gage Park turned into lakes. Viaducts at places like West 47th Street and South Archer Avenue were completely submerged, trapping cars and stranding drivers. The Stevenson Expressway had to close temporarily at Pulaski because water was pooling across the lanes. Social media was flooded, no pun intended, with videos of homeowners frantically bailing out basements that had filled up to waist level. It's the kind of scene that makes you feel helpless, watching your home fill with water. The power outages were another massive issue. At the height of the storm, over 200,000 customers across northern Illinois lost electricity. ComEd, the local utility company, reported that fallen trees and downed power lines were the main culprits. By Sunday night, they'd restored power to about 90% of customers, but tens of thousands were still in the dark into Monday morning. Crews were working around the clock, but in some areas, trees were blocking access to damaged lines, slowing things down. I saw a post on X from a resident in McHenry County who said, "No power, no AC, and it's still 90 degrees outside. Send help." It's a reminder of how much we rely on electricity, especially in the middle of a heat wave. The storm didn't just disrupt homes, it threw a wrench into transportation, too. O'Hare International Airport, one of the busiest in the country, issued a ground stop during the evening storms, delaying hundreds of flights. If you've ever been stuck at an airport during a weather event, you know how frustrating that can be. Meanwhile, in McHenry County, 70-mile-per-hour winds knocked down trees from Fox River Grove to Woodstock, blocking roads and cutting power. Farther south, towns like Romeoville and Lyles saw similar damage, with cars trapped under fallen branches and streets closed off for emergency crews. The sheer scope of this storm was staggering. It wasn't just one town or one county, it left its mark everywhere. So, what caused this chaos? According to the National Weather Service's Chicago office, it all started with an extremely hot and humid air mass that built up over Illinois on Saturday. The heat index was pushing 100 to 105 degrees, creating an atmosphere that was ready to explode. When the first storms formed, they tapped into that unstable air and grew into something fierce. As the night went on, the storms organized into that mesoscale convective system I mentioned earlier, a massive, self-sustaining storm complex that can keep going for hours. This system produced both the destructive winds and the heavy rains that caused flash flooding. The microbursts in places like Belvedere and Mount Prospect were the most intense parts, but the straight-line winds and flooding did damage across a huge area. For the folks in Illinois, the storm's over, but the recovery is just beginning. The National Weather Service warned that more storms could hit Monday afternoon and evening, with damaging winds and flash flooding possible again, especially south of the major interstates. Lake Michigan is also seeing dangerous conditions, with high winds and waves making swimming a bad idea. The good news? Forecasters say cooler, drier weather is on the way midweek, which should give communities a chance to catch their breath. In the meantime, officials are urging residents to document any damage for insurance claims, dispose of water-damaged items to prevent mold, and stay cautious around flooded areas. Cities like Mount Prospect and Belvedere are working with groups like the American Red Cross to help displaced residents, while Chicago is keeping a close eye on neighborhoods that have flooded multiple times this summer. ComEd crews are still out there, going street by street to restore power. If you're in an affected area, officials are reminding drivers to treat intersections with dead traffic lights as four-way stops and to steer clear of flooded underpasses. Safety first, folks. This storm was a wake-up call about how quickly things can go from calm to catastrophic. For those of you watching, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Were you in Illinois during this storm? What did you see or experience? Drop it in the comments below, and let's get the conversation going. That's it for today's deep dive into the Illinois storm of August 2025. If you found this video informative, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more weather breakdowns. I'll keep tracking the latest updates.